to another episode of the HR Growth Network podcast. This special series with Gwen Francis. We're going to be talking about how we learn the laws if you move countries as a senior HR professional. I am so excited to have you back on, Gwen. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Toy, and it's always great to be here, and just love being able to share our stories. So thank
You're
you.
welcome, Gwen. You're welcome. This episode, we're going to be talking about learning the laws. And this is going to be extremely useful information for any HR professional who's moving countries or even moving continents. You and I have moved, we've moved countries, we've moved continents. You moved from SA, South Africa to the UK. I've moved from Nigeria to the UK, and we both moved at really senior levels. But then it doesn't affect our HR skill set, but we have to manage around a new set of labor laws. What has been your experience with that? And I would love if you can share that with us, Gwen.
Oh, Toyin, you're so right. I mean, wow. I think I start all these podcasts with wow,
Honestly,
like, the
it's
move, right? So, I mean, if we talk about laws, you have the basic laws of right and wrong, do not murder, do not, I mean, those are kind of universal,
yeah,
right? But then you have, you have the laws of traffic, which is don't speed, don't, all of those laws. But I mean, if you just think from a laws point of view, for me coming to the UK, one of the laws outside of HR is just driving, right? So the speed limits, everything is miles per hour, not kilometers. So suddenly you have to learn the laws of different roads have different speed limits. Now it's 70, 60, 50, 30,
it's
whereas in South
20,
Africa it's
even 20.
120, and I don't even know what they mean, and there's no signposts, and you just have to know, like, the little, like,
You have to
white
look
thing
at
with a
forest.
black stripe
You have
means
to look
you're in
at
a
forest.
different zone. So, there's just so many opportunities and things to learn. So, from a law point of view, and the biggest one, if you drive, is just learning the laws of the road, learning the laws of the roundabout. And I laugh because driving for me was such a culture shift. Learning the laws of the buses and the trains and the transport system is phenomenal here. But it's just learning those laws of how that
How that
works.
works.
So, yeah, I think it's just when you come here, you need to know that it's not just come in and kind of move in. As you said earlier, it's about, you need to learn the ways of working, the ways of doing things. And from an HR point of view, and Toy and you and I have chatted a little bit about this. We have the labour law, we have the Labour Law Relations Act that in South Africa was kind of the true north. We talk about Section 189 and 197 and all the different, sections of the labour law. And here it's not like that in the
Yeah.
UK. I think the fundamentals are similar around no murder, if no assault in the workplace, misconduct, but the way of getting to that and managing that is slightly different.
Yes.
And I think the shout out to the HR community is wherever you go, again, we say don't assume. In the last podcast, don't assume, right? So it's what do you need to do to be able to make sure that you get on top of that? And for me, what's been helpful is, in the UK, they have a website called ACAS. And there's a lot of very useful information on there around working time directives, disciplinary processes, grievance, conciliation, tribunals. So there's a lot of different wording terminology that we would know as, CCMA, in South Africa. Here it's a tribunal. So there's a lot of different terms that mean the same thing but are managed slightly differently. So as an HR professional, you need to make those links and be able to understand that it is definitely a different way of doing
Yeah.
things. Because I've also moved into a different role in a different environment, I've had to adjust to kind of, those local ways of doing
Yeah.
things, return to work, which we never did in South Africa, right? If you were off sick and you came back to work, it was, hi, welcome back, are you feeling better? Here, there's a formal process of return to work. So I think learning the law is absolutely key to, to your success as an HR
Yeah.
person, from a professionalism and integrity and a confidence builder
Yes.
for both you and your business partners.
Fantastic, fantastic. You've touched on a lot of things that I'm just going to further highlight, Gwen, because I want our listeners to get this really clearly. Your not knowing the law does not make you less of an HR professional. I think that's something I really need listeners to take away from this podcast. You're moving into another country, whether you're moving from Nigeria to America, from Nigeria to the UK, from South Africa, from Kenya to any other part of the world, you are an HR professional and that's who you are. That's the skill set that you came on board with. Now, the application of it will be slightly different because the laws of the land are different. What sort of attitude should you have? Should you assume, but like Gwen said in the last podcast, do not assume. Do not assume you've been handling disciplinary cases for ages, so you're just going to walk in there and do what you've always done. But remember, you did what you did back in your home country, guided by the labor laws of your home country. Now you're in another country. You're in another jurisdiction. You need to understand how things are done. In order to integrate better, my very first rule of the term, be modest. Be modest and say, you know what? I don't have a clear sight on this, but I'll be happy to go away and get my homework done and have a conversation with you tomorrow, next tomorrow, fix another meeting. But what's going to happen in that conversation is that you have shown that you are modest and you've shown that you're a person of integrity. You haven't assumed that you know what to do. You've taken time to go back to consult. And what that does is, even if you had the right frame in terms of how this should go directionally, now you've got the right step by step of how we should go because you can't afford to mess it up. It is so expensive. It's so expensive for you as an HR professional in a new environment for you to make a mistake or a blunder when it comes to the application of the labor laws at work. It is so expensive. Reputationally, it doesn't do you any favor. And it does have a huge, massive, it could have a huge, massive financial impact on the organization because you did something you should not have done or you said something you should not have done. So now you've got a double jeopardy. You've got that reputational damage to manage for your own personal brand. And then you've got the financial damage, potential financial damage to manage, and brand damage to manage for your employer. That's not definitely going to be a happy conversation. So my first thoughts on this would be modest. You don't know it. You do not know it, except if you've lived in that country and you've worked in that country for a number of years in that capacity as an HR advisor or an HR manager who's handling policies and processes and things like that. If you haven't done that, you're new in the country or you're new in the role, get back to learning. Take a point of modesty, get back to learning. And there are quite a number of opportunities for you to learn. When you mentioned the ACAS website, there are courses with the CIPD. There are courses online. There are webinars you can join and attend just to get an understanding of how things are done. And then there are also organizations that provide support. Now, interestingly, this is not an advert in any way, but there's an organization called Krona, and they've been doing this for over 80 years. They have been handling, supporting HR professionals to manage tricky HR situations if they've got an issue at work that needs solving. Obviously, the service isn't free. The organization would pay for it. But what you do is that you then activate a whole set, a whole network of professionals who can advise you on the right things to do. Whether you're letting go of someone, whether you're taking someone back at work from being sick, how you're managing the communications, how you're managing the process. If it's a disciplinary that has now gotten to the point that the person needs to be let go of, you can't go in there with the old set of rules. That's something I really want our listeners to take away from this podcast. Don't assume, like Gwen says, do not assume.
No, you're so right, Toy. And I mean, one of the things I did when I got into my new role here was what is the disciplinary procedure? What is the code of conduct from a site-based point of view? Because, you know, unless you're in a startup where you have to do it, there's something in place. And I think the information is out there, so if there's something that you don't know, don't feel, oh, no one's going to know. The information is there. It's just how do you tap into
Yeah,
that? And that's around again, and I think networking, we're talking about it, I think, in a next podcast,
yes,
Toyin, but it's just about there's someone there. It's about being humble and being modest enough to be able to say, listen, you know what, Toyin, I have this scenario, I need to soundboard off you. This is my interpretation of it. Are you okay? And there's nothing wrong with doing that until you have that confidence to be able to make that decision. And as
absolutely.
a young HR professional, you're not meant to know all the answers. That's why you have an HR advisor or an HR manager. But if you are that advisor or manager and you still don't know, for me, I asked the questions. I went to the HR community within my organization and I said, guys, hand on heart, I'm just sounding bored. And for me, it was, I felt I should know it. Like, why am I second guessing myself? Like, are they going to think I'm stupid because I'm asking? But you know what? There is no such thing as a stupid question.
Absolutely.
And I think it's about having that confidence to be able to say, you know what, I don't know, but I'm on a learning journey and I'm going to find out. And 10 out of 10 for, credit to me for being gutsy enough to say, I'm soundboarding, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the strength comes
I
from.
love it. I love it. And it's just that subtle shift in understanding that it's not a weakness to say, I do not know. It's not a weakness to say to your business partner at work, that's a lovely question. I'm going to go away and come back to you with a response to that. Could you allow me a couple of hours? Can I fix a follow up meeting next week? It's just how you handle it. And I know that it's human nature. It's the nature of the brain to sort of say, oh, you shouldn't have said that, or saying that makes you look bad. Now you don't have credibility. Now they're not going to trust you. No, that's just your brain trying to sabotage your learning process, and you're not going to allow that. So our advice would be, when it comes to understanding the laws of whichever country you've moved to and you're working in human resources, please be modest enough to say you do not know. Do not assume that you know because you don't. Please be modest enough to say that you do not know it. I know you may think to yourself, but I said I knew it at the interview. Well, you probably shouldn't have said that. You should have just said, you know what, I'm on a learning journey, and these are the 4 or 5 things I'm doing in order to bring myself up to speed. No one is going to say no to you. No one is going to turn you down if you were 9 out of 10. And then we're talking about the labor laws, and obviously you don't know that because you just moved. No one is going to turn you down. That's something we find that HR professionals are absolutely terrified about. Going into these interviews and admitting that you don't know this. That's okay. In fact, if I was sitting on the other side of the table and you reeled out everything to me and your answers were correct, I would dig further to say, how did you know? How did you know? You came in 3 months ago. How did you know? And if you then said to me, oh, I took a course or I got some learning, I'm on a support network, kudos to you for being that proactive. So if you're an HR professional listening in and you're thinking about the next set of interviews you're going into and you're thinking to yourself, the labor laws is a bit of a gray area, that's fine. Brush up on it before the interview. Get into the interview, give it your best shot. Continue brushing up on it because, again, there are updates to the labor laws, there are refreshers to the labor law. How do you keep abreast of it? How do you ensure that you are up to date? And like Gwen said, hand on heart, if there is a tricky situation, you're better off consulting than taking a wild guess. You're better off consulting than taking a wild guess. Isn't that true, Gwen?
No, absolutely, Toyin. And I think just to summarize for me, just so key what you said now is it's always
Yeah.
changing. It's about getting onto websites that keep you updated. It's about enrolling in short courses or short webinars. They're all out
Yes.
there. And that might mean where you say, you know what, once or twice a month, my goal is to join a webinar for labor law updates. It's approaching the organization and saying, well, what training do you have? I mean, when I joined it, there was a whole suite of amazing courses that the company offered. So it's really just tapping into that and stepping into it for the learning. So learn, learn, learn. Be willing to grow. Be willing to ask. Don't take, if you don't know,
Don't as
be honest enough to say, I don't know, and I'll find out. So, such valuable truths, Toyin. And I think this is an area that it's a little less grey. You really need to kind of be on top of it because of the risk to both the employee and the employer. And you need to make sure on that you've got all your facts, you've got your facts straight. So thank you, Toyin. That's been my little words of wisdom for today's
I
podcast.
absolutely enjoyed it. Now, next week, I'm looking forward to us talking about networking and how networking is going to support that new HR professional, senior, mid, junior, who's moved into a new environment and help you settle in and integrate and even accelerate your career. Isn't that fantastic?
Wow, such exciting truths, Toyin. Can't wait to meet with you and your listeners next
All
week.
right, love it. Thank you so much, Gwen, for coming on this episode, and I'll see you at the next episode. Take care.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Bye.